Summary of the London Bookshop Affair, a novel of the Cold War written by Louise Fein. Chapter 1. In the quietude of 13, Copperfield Street, the clash of tradition and ambition unfolded in the life of Celia Duchesne. The year was 1962, a time marked by societal shifts and changing norms, yet within the walls of her Victorian home, conservatism reigned supreme. Celia's aspirations were kindled by the echoes of adventurous girls from the 90s and those who graced the stage between the wars. The allure of television, the new frontier for dreamy-eyed youngsters, beckoned to her, promising a path where authority and creativity intertwined. In her mind's eye, she saw herself donning a smart Mary Quant suit, clipboard in hand, commanding a recording studio at Television Center. The vision clashed with the prevailing attitudes of her parents, particularly her mother, who viewed such aspirations as folly. The clash of generations unfolded at the breakfast table, a microcosm of the broader societal debates. Celia's father, the head of the kitchen table, was a penniless Belgian refugee turned esteemed French chef, embracing change and progress. In contrast, her mother, the embodiment of Victorian values, clung tenaciously to tradition, wary of the looming concrete blocks threatening to erase the familiar Victorian back-to-backs. The clash was not just ideological, it played out in the minutiae of daily life. Celia's voracious reading habits, whether books or magazines, were met with her mother's disapproval. A plate of bacon and eggs was accompanied by a stern command to put the reading material away and focus on the mundanities of breakfast. The tension in the air reflected the broader struggle between the old and the new. The narrative gained depth as news of the changing hands of the bookshop where Celia worked reached her ears. Mr. and Mrs. Blythe, the custodians of her sanctuary, were retiring, passing the torch to a new owner. The uncertainty of her role under the stewardship of an unknown figure added a layer of complexity to Celia's already tumultuous journey. The conflict within Celia mirrored the societal dynamics of the time, where women grappled with expanding horizons, but were tethered by the prevailing gender norms. The Good Housekeeping's career guide served as Celia's secret escape, a clandestine portal to a world beyond Copperfield Street. Her dreams of a career in television production collided with the stark realities of limited opportunities for women in the field, reinforcing the societal barriers that loomed large. As Celia navigated the stormy seas of familial expectations, a moment of revelation occurred. The quaint cardigan she wore, covered in cat hairs and deemed by her parents as unsuitable for impressing the new bookshop owner, became a symbol. It wasn't merely a sartorial choice, but a metaphor for the constraints placed upon her by societal expectations. The clash between her desire for autonomy and the traditional values imposed upon her unfolded in the minutiae of her wardrobe. The clash reached its zenith when Celia disclosed the changing hands of the bookshop to her parents. The Blythes, who had become a surrogate family, were retiring, and the new owner's inclinations were unknown. The revelation served as a catalyst for Celia's introspection about her future. The familiarity of the bookshop had been a comfort, a constant in her life, and its potential transformation underscored the transient nature of stability. In the midst of familial discord, Celia's confrontation with societal expectations reached a crescendo. Her mother, emblematic of conservative values, dismissed the idea of a career, asserting that ambition wasn't an attractive quality in a girl. Marriage and adherence to traditional roles were championed as the keys to happiness, a sentiment that resonated with the societal norms of the time. However, Celia's defiance emerged. She challenged the notion that ambition was unbecoming and questioned the expectation that she should relinquish her dreams upon marriage. The clash between tradition and Celia's burgeoning individuality played out vividly as she asserted her desire for a different future. As the narrative unfolded, Southwark, the backdrop of Celia's life, emerged as a character in its own right. The gritty reality of the neighborhood, steeped in Dickensian history, clashed with the sense of community and pride that bound its inhabitants. The clash between progress and preservation mirrored the internal struggle within Celia, torn between her desire for change and the comfort of the familiar. In the poignant moments of the breakfast table confrontation, Celia's journey took a definitive turn. The realization that her sanctuary, the bookshop, was undergoing a transformation propelled her towards a crossroads. The certainty of her path, once anchored in the familiarity of the Blythe shop, now dissolved into uncertainty. The clash of tradition and ambition, played out in familial and societal expectations, laid the foundation for Celia's quest for autonomy and self-discovery in a world torn between the old and the new. Chapter 2. Celia's footsteps echoed through the empty streets as she approached H.J. Potts, booksellers. The familiar facade of the bookstore, squeezed between shops catering to legal attire and bespoke business suits, brought a mix of nostalgia and anxiety. For 3 years, Celia had stepped off the double-decker bus outside Somerset House and made her way to the quaint bookshop. But today was different. Last week marked her farewell to Mr. and Mrs. Blythe, the elderly owners who had sold the shop due to Mr. Blythe's deteriorating health. As she stood before the small entrance, Celia couldn't help but wonder if this was to be her last visit. The uncertainty that lingered since her goodbyes with the Blythes had left her in a state of limbo. With a deep breath, she tugged at her sedate beige cardigan, a contrast to the racy red one she had donned in the hopes of injecting some vibrancy into the day. This could very well be the final time she reached for the familiar door handle of H.J. Potts. The entrance bell chimed as Celia stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the darkness within after the bright daylight outside. Relief swept through her as she surveyed the unchanged interior. The old-fashioned glass-topped counter, dominated by a large cash till, stood at the back. The Art Deco lamp, casting multicolored patterns through its beveled glass shade, still adorned the space. The shelves, filled floor to ceiling with old books, retained their familiar arrangement, and the latter propped against the upper shelves hinted at the countless stories waiting to be discovered. Even the distinct smell of old leather, wood polish, and the acerbic hint of musty mold enveloped her, providing a comforting sense of continuity. For a moment, Celia entertained the dizzying thought that the Blythes had changed their minds. Perhaps they were in the stockroom or making their way downstairs from the flat above the shop. With a hopeful heart, she called out, "Hello? Mrs. Denton?" The name of the new owner resonated through the silence. No response. The unsettling quiet reinforced the uncertainty of Celia's future. She recalled her first encounter with H.J. Potts, a memory that intertwined her love for books and the serendipity that had led her to this quaint bookshop. Sent on an errand by her mother, Celia had jogged from the bus stop along the Strand, racing toward the Strand Palace Hotel. It was then that the sign, H.J. Potts, Booksellers, EST 1843, caught her eye for the first time. The allure of the shop was undeniable, particularly the stunning first-edition copies of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, displayed in the bay window. The sight of these literary treasures, alongside works by Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, and Lord Byron, had momentarily eclipsed the errand for her father's forgotten reading spectacles. Inside, the dark and dusty treasure trove of H.J. Potts overwhelmed Celia's senses with the scent of dust, leather, and beeswax. The encounter with Mrs. Blythe, the proprietress, had shaped the course of Celia's life. Naive inquiries about the Mary Shelleys led to a conversation about the impending sale and the Blythes' desire to hire a shop assistant. Celia had impulsively offered her services, expressing her love for organizing and books. The words spilled out before she could comprehend the potential impact on her life. Mrs. Blythe, in her wisdom, had seen promise in the young girl. The rest, as they say, was history. Now, as Celia stood inside the familiar walls of H.J. Potts, she couldn't escape the weight of uncertainty. The narrative of her life had intersected with this bookshop, and the possibility of its closure left her grappling with an uncertain future. The silence persisted, broken only by Celia's tentative footsteps as she moved deeper into the shop. The locked glass cabinets housed the most valuable stock, and the trolley, half filled with books, remained pushed against the counter. Everything seemed frozen in time, as if the spirit of H.J. Potts resisted the intrusion of change. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, Celia decided to explore the stockroom. The door creaked open, revealing shelves stacked with more books, some wrapped in protective covers, others exposed to the elements of time. It was a repository of stories, waiting to be discovered and shared. As Celia moved through the dimly lit space, She couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a stockroom, it was a passage through time. The narrative of H.J. Potts unfolded before her like a well-worn novel, with each shelf representing a chapter in the bookstore's storied history. As her fingers brushed against the spines of the books, Celia felt a connection to the past and the countless readers who had traversed these same aisles. The stories whispered to her, urging her to embrace the uncertainty, to become a custodian of this literary haven. With newfound resolve, Celia emerged from the stockroom, determined to face whatever awaited her. The future of H.J. Potts, booksellers, remained uncertain, but the echoes of its past resonated through the shelves, inviting Celia to become a part of its continuing narrative.